Hello and welcome to Learn with Indrjeet. This is another video in the series of videos titled Building a To-Do Management System Application in the latest .NET 8 framework from Microsoft. In the previous video, we started implementing a modal pop-up to add or edit a to-do item with all its properties, and we completed half part of the UI along with date range picker. If you haven't watched that video, please go ahead and watch that first. In this video, we are going to complete the UI part of the model pop-up along with validations on date and the server-side functionality to add the to-do. Okay, so this video is going to be very informative. Please watch it till end, and if you find this video useful, give it a thumbs up. I am very excited to dive in, but before we jump in, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on the latest content. So let's get started. So here we are in Visual Studio. I have got the application running, and on the to-dos page we have implemented up to due date. Now let's complete the UI part of this modal dialog, and then we'll move on to the functionality implementation. So let's stop it and let's go to our to-dos page where we implemented this manage model partial. Control T to open the same, and just below this due date form group, let me paste in some of the markup. So this group is for the reminder date. We also want to have a reminder date here, which will be the actual reminder date. So the reminder date for date range picker. Then we have a drop down for repeat frequency of the task. It might be hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, half yearly and yearly. It's a simple static one for the time being. We will implement this functionality later on. Then we have a checkbox for important and another one for completed. Okay, let's convert this button to normal button, and let's give it an ID of BT and save. Right, we'll implement this functionality also. So let's see the UI, how it looks like now. Okay, so the to-dos, here we have our complete model pop-up with the due date. Let's say we select a date of 15th Feb. Let's say the time is 10 a.m. and then the reminder date is not having a date range picker. So let's go ahead and implement that in the JS file. So the JS file is here. Control T to open the same, and let's duplicate all these lines for the reminder date. Okay, so from here, now in this copied text we want to replace due with reminder in the selection. Okay, so that's fine. Save and let's refresh. So if due date is 15th 10 a.m., the reminder date cannot be more than 15th, but here we can select any date like so. So this is wrong. So first of all, let's do one thing. As soon as the user selects a due date on this date picker, let's make that date as the maximum date on this picker. One thing. Second scenario is, if someone comes here and selects the reminder date straight away, we should not allow that without selecting the due date. Okay, let's implement these validations and then we'll move on to filling up this to-do list with a list of to-do lists, and then we'll implement the save functionality. Okay, so let's go back to the todos.js, and when we apply a date on the due date, let's set, let me put in a comment, set max date on reminder date. And how to do that? We want to get hold of the date range picker that is there on this control. So this control dot data with a date range picker, in that dot max date should be equal to the date that we just selected on due date. One thing, let's check that. So if we click on due date 15th 10 a.m., then yes, all the dates beyond that are now disabled. This is one thing. If we select 15, we cannot go beyond 10:03. Okay, like that. Okay, that's fine. Now the second scenario, we don't want the user to select any date if he has not selected the due date. Okay, so let's implement a check for that. So when we are applying a date on the reminder date, we want to check something first. So where due date text is equal to the value of the due date, whatever the user has selected for a due date, let's get hold of that. Then an if this text is not equal to empty, and this picker dot start date that we selected on the reminder date is less than or equal to the date that is there on the due date picker. So let's get that, copy this, paste it here, just change the name to due date. So we are getting hold of the date range picker that is associated with the due date currently, and we are trying to get the start date from that. And the actual date that is there. So this represents the date that we just selected on the due date. Okay, if this condition is true, only then set these two values on the reminder, else just make both of these empty, so that message toaster dot error with a simple message that reminder date cannot be greater than due date, like so. And let's remove the empty lines, Control KD, save, and let's check if it works. So refresh and click. So if someone comes straight away to reminder date and selects any date, clicks on apply, we are showing reminder date cannot be greater than the due date because there is no due date. But if we select 15th 10 a.m. 10:00 a.m. as the due date, then we should not be able to select any date or time after 15th 10 a.m. and if we go to 15, the maximum is set automatically. So let's say we want to set a reminder for 14th. That's fine, that is allowed. So the validations are now working. This drop down is already there as a static drop down. These we can manipulate, that's fine. Now let's work on to fill this to-do list drop down with all the list items. Okay, list to-do lists. So close this and let's go back, stop the application, and to get all the lists as a drop down, we only want two properties. One is the ID and one is the text. So let's create a drop down VM for that. Oh, it is already there. So this drop down VM is having a property called ID and a property called text. So from the to-do list model, let me show you that. From the to-do list model, the ID would map to this ID and this name should map to text. Okay, so let's go ahead to the API controller of to-do lists and create a function to get all the drop downs. Okay, so let me just take this one. Yes, this one. So let's copy that and paste here like that. So it would be API to-do list get drop down. Let's name it appropriately, and there would be a function in the to-do list service to get the drop downs. Okay, and if the model vms.count is less than blah blah blah, then we want to say get failed, otherwise this much count is fetched. Okay, so this function is not there in the to-do list service. Let's go ahead and create that. So this is the to-do list service. Let's go to the interface and create a function that will return a task of list of type drop down VMs, and the name would be get drop downs, get drop down with no parameters. Okay, now let's implement this here and we'll say there is this function that gets the model and returns it after converting into something. So let's copy paste that. So we want to get all the list items, all the to-do lists, and then we want to convert it to drop downs. Okay, and public async, right? So here we are getting all the list items, all the to-do lists, and converting them into drop down VMs and returning back. So in the AutoMapper profile, let's go there. We want to add another mapping to drop down VMs with for member function, right? Let me just get it from the clipboard, like so. So the ID would be mapped to ID, but the text of the drop down VM would be mapped to list name. Okay, so save. Let's close this. Let's close this one, also this one. And in the controller, now it is happy. Yes. Let's check it up to the API level. Then we'll implement it to the web. So start the application. Let's go to API, the to-do list controller, get drop down endpoint. Try that. And here we have the ID and the text, and the text is containing the name of the list. Okay, see, now let's use this in the web app to fill that drop down. So stop the application and let's go to web app services, where we have the to-do list service, and we want to have another function. So in the interface, we want to have another function, control D, get drop down without any parameter, returning an API response. Let's implement that in here. So get drop down without any param, and we simply want to call get drop down function in the controller that we just saw in the Swagger UI. Okay, and now let's close these. Let's close the controller and go to the code behind file of to-dos. So F7 to do that, and let me just paste in a few lines of code and we'll look at these one by one. Okay, so this function is on get to-do list drop down. It calls the get drop down function on the to-do list service, returns an API response. We are checking if the API response is not null, and also the status code is 200. Then we are deserializing the API response data property into a list of drop down VMs, and if the model VMs is not null and the count is greater than 0, then we are returning it as a JSON result, else we are returning a simple message that record not found. Okay, now let's use this server side function in the JS file to initiate the to-do list drop down when the model pop-up opens up. Okay, so We want to create a function in the JS file. So let's create a function called, let's say, initiate to do list, and where selected options is equal to, this is an empty option, then we are using Ajax get call, and the name of the handler, this one, is exactly same with this thing that we have here. So we are calling this server side function to return some data, and in the callback of this function we are handling if data is not null and data is not equal to record not found, then we are looping through each item in the data that is containing the ID and the text of the to-do list, and we are preparing options for the select element. Okay, if data is null, then we are showing an error message. Right, after all this, we are getting hold of the to-do list drop down, that is this one. Right, we are emptying it and then appending whatever select options we could gather from this function. So this function is supposed to return a drop down items, and we are just appending those drop down items to the element on UI. Okay, now let's use this function when the modal pop-up shows up. So let's get the ID of the modal pop-up. So copy that and get hold of this item here. So hashtag ID dot on function, on event name is show bs model, show dot bs dot model, and the callback function with event e, let's call this function for the time being. Let's do that and start the application. Let's put in a breakpoint over here and let's see how the get drop down works. So here we are in the to-dos. Let's try opening the modal pop-up. When the modal pop-up tries to show up, this function is called. This function calls the server side function, and we are on this breakpoint. So let's go there, F10, F11 to go into this function. So let's go there, and then it goes to the controller of to-do list and call this function get drop down and returns the API response. So the API response now contains the data. Okay, 7 records fetched. So the status code is 200. Model VMs, we have 7 to-do lists, and when these to-do lists are returned to the Ajax call, it loops through and prepares the drop down. Okay, so let me remove this breakpoint, and yeah, let's continue. So here we have the list items. Now the user is able to select, or he can choose not to select any list. Okay, so let's put in some item. So buy fruits, the due date would be like 15th, 10 a.m. and the reminder date would be 14th. It cannot be 10:21 p.m. See, yes, on the 14th it can be 10:21 p.m. That's fine. And repetition, let's not select repeat, and it is important. So when we click save, let's implement a functionality to add this to do to the list of to-dos, okay, in test list 4. So we'll come here again and select all these values, but before that let's implement save. So close this, stop the application. In the todos.js, let's create a function. So we want to handle the on click event. Let me just change it to on and click, like so. Okay, so what we want to do is, on this, when this button is clicked, we want to handle the click event, and in the callback function we want to get hold of this control, that is this button, and we want to search for the form the button is in, like this form, right? And the method is post here. So if the form is valid, then we want to get hold of the button old HTML, that is save this text, this one, disable the control and show a spinner on that button saying please wait, and then we want to submit the form. Okay, and at the end of it, when this function like completes, then we want to enable the control, enable the button back and return its old HTML back to it. Okay, and on the server side, when this form is submitted, we want to have a function, the name would be onPost, to handle the submit of that form. Okay, so let me just take that from like this. Okay, we want to name this handler to onPost manage. Okay, so manage would be the handler. So let me just go there. ASP page handler would be manage, like so. So onPost manage, this manage would be the name of the handler that we specified here. Okay, so now this model DTO that is there is in small letters, so this is our model DTO. So let's go ahead and replace this thing with this thing inside of this text. Okay, so here we are checking if model DTO.id is 0, That means we are creating a to-do. We need to set in the created on date to UTC now. Then we are calling to-dos data service create method to create the to-do. And in case of when we have the ID already, we call the edit function. That we'll do a bit later. So right now we are doing it for create. Then we are checking the API response. If it is not null and the status code is also 200 okay, then we are deserializing the created DTO and showing the user a message. Okay, and at the end of it we are redirecting to the same page. So let's see by putting in a debug point here, start the application. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add an item to to-do list, say 4, buy fruits from market. The due date is 15th, morning 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Okay, the reminder date would be 15th, but it should be 9 a.m. Okay, and it is an important task. Let's try hitting the save. Yes, so the form is valid and it is submitted. Now let's go line by line. So created on is added. Now just to see which this create function is called or not, I am pressing F11. Yes, now we are in the create function in the generic service. So let's click F10. Then the API response came. It is status code 200 okay. Record created successfully. Okay, so let's move ahead, and the created DTO is yes, buy fruits from market. And now let's move ahead, remove this breakpoint and continue. So yes, this message says record created, fine, and the page is redirected. Okay, so where do we see that to do? We need to go to to-do list. This list 4 has this list, and here we have the buy fruits from market, which is an important task here. Obviously we can edit or delete it as we did in a previous video. So this way we have implemented a modal pop-up to create a to-do. What if we want to edit the to-do with the same modal pop-up, right? That in the next video. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you found this video helpful and learned something, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button below. Your support means a lot to me. This encourages me to invest more time and create more valuable content for you. Remember to click the notification bell so you never miss an update on future videos. In the comment section below, please let me know what you learned from today's video. What was your favorite part? If you have any questions on today's topic or suggestions for future videos, feel free to drop them in the comments. I read and respond to as many of them as I can. To watch more videos on the same topic, check out the playlist or visit the channel. Thank you so much for your time. Keep learning.